Welcome to the Pastor to Pioneer podcast. This is a space where we have honest conversations about the insights and stories on the journey from pastor to pioneer. I'm your host, Britton Smith. Whether you are a pastor feeling stuck and burdened by the prevailing model, dreaming of another way, or you're taking steps towards pioneering a disciple-making and simple church movement, we hope this podcast reminds you that you're not crazy, you're not alone. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Pastor to Pioneer podcast. I am here with today's guest, Josh Chaffin, and Josh is a fellow Michigander. He also has 3 sons. He also used to be a former pastor, and I hope I'm right on this one, Josh, also a University of Michigan fan. Is that correct?
Wow, Central Michigan University.
Oh, that's right.
I thought
I
do like U of M, but CMU is where it's at.
All right. Well, when we get in your story, they'll find out why you're a Central Michigan fan, but not a ton of Central Michigan fans nationally compared to University of Michigan fans, but that's all right.
We're growing.
Well, man, I'm glad that you agreed to be on the podcast today. You were on, I don't know, a year, 2 years ago. But I thought it'd be good to have you on because you shared that episode with someone else, and you just have lived more of this disciple-making life post-pastoral ministry. And I thought, hey, it'd be great to get a more in-depth of your story, and you share with us some of the wisdom and things you've picked up along the way. So welcome to your second time on the Pastor to Pioneer podcast.
Well, it's good to be back, Britton.
I will say you are in rare company. There's few people that have made more than one episode. You're soon to be on the Wall of Fame.
Wow. I'm honored, absolutely honored to be back. And maybe I know a few more things than I did last time I was on here.
Well, I appreciate just being so willing to share those with our listeners, man. I'd love for you to start and just take us back a little bit about your story, kind of who you are, how'd you come to know the Lord, and what led you into pastoral ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in the church. My parents, my mom and dad, they modeled what it was like not just to go to church, but really know God and walk with Him. And so thankful for that upbringing and everything, but received Christ at a very young age. Chose to get baptized in between 5th and 6th grade. Just after thinking about it, praying about it, I went to my mom. I was like, I want to get baptized too, and so I did that just all at a very young age. And then as I got into junior high school, my identity really was wrapped up mainly in sports, athletic achievements, and accomplishments. And it was during my sophomore year of college when kind of 2 idols in my life. They went away within a matter of a few days of each other. Ooh. And Jesus, who I would have said was top priority at the time, although looking back, he was not top priority at the time. As my dream of playing college football came to an end, as a relationship also came to an end, it was like Jesus was left. And my prayer that night, as kind of everything, my world kind of came crashing down, was, God, you got me. And it wasn't just words, it was really the cry of my heart. And since then, He's proven to be more than enough. And He's really taken that, not just top priority, but really, the way I try to describe it to people is like, He's like the pie pan that holds every piece of the pie together. And so I've really, when I was in school, then into ministry, and now like my marriage, my family, Jesus has to be in all of it. He's not just a piece of the pie, but He's that pie pan that is running through every piece of my life. And so that's kind of my story. But really that sophomore year of college was really when Jesus grabbed a hold of me and really became king of my life.
What caused the dream of playing college football? What caused it to end? Was it an injury?
I wish. No, it was money. It was... I could not, I'm not the greatest athlete in the world by any means, but I just could not afford those Division III private schools. And I was just like looking at it and I'm like, I'm going to graduate with so much debt if I play football. And so it was kind of, I looked into a few different options, like my freshman year of college, I was like looking at one. Sophomore year of college, I was looking at another one. I'm like, if I live at home, if I try to do all these things right, and I just, the numbers were not adding up. And it's just like, okay, I'm done playing football. And yeah,
Wow.
that was it was a rough week, but man, I look back and it was such a good week, instrumental week. It's just,
It's
the
awesome.
sports idol gone, relationship gone. It's like, okay, Jesus, you got me.
So that that aspect, Jesus became the top priority in your life. How did you
Mhm.
go from there to then deciding you were going to go into traditional pastoral ministry?
Well, I'd say there's nothing traditional about the route I was on,
Fair enough.
because I was involved in a campus ministry. Long story short, transferred to Central Michigan University, stayed involved in the campus ministry, which had just become a church at Central Michigan. And my wife and I, we got married in college, and she was graduating a year before me because I had transferred, so it kind of set me back a year. And they had originally asked her to come on staff for a year, just kind of, she's like, I can do it. I want to be a teacher, but I'm going to do it to help with the transition because I was still going to be around finishing up student teaching and finishing up that last year. And they basically just kind of asked and they said, Josh, like, would you, rather than having a part-time job, would you guys just want to raise a little bit extra support and you could be um, on staff with quotes, meaning my wife was on staff and I was just kind of the bonus. Um, and so I'm like, well, that sounds better than just a different part-time job. Why don't we raise a little bit more support? And my part-time job can be helping the ministry. And that's what we did. And as that year kind of came to a close, I was getting ready to graduate. They came to me and said, we know that your wife, Wendy, wants to teach. Um, but would you consider staying on staff, being an associate minister here with the college ministry, the college church? And so we did, and we prayed. We said yes without much of an income or any promise of a job for my wife, and that's how we got into ministry. And never thought we would be there as long as we were, but I ended up being on staff 16 years at that
Wow.
college church.
And did you stay in that associate role, or did you I was gonna transfer? Did you transition into different roles then at the church?
I did. Yeah. So the first 6 years I was an associate, and then the final 10 years I was in the lead minister role, is what the title was, I guess. But yeah, I went from getting to hang out at coffee shops, being with people all the time, getting to speak here and there, to speaking often, way too often for my liking, planning lots of good things, but it really took me off of campus in many ways and more into a overseer, planning, and speaking role. And God did some great things and matured me and us in some ways, but I really I really loved being an associate because I got to be with the people. I got to be with the students.
Okay.
A lot more of the either sit down one-on-one meetings or small groups of 4, 5, and 6 guys, and I love that. But my role changed, and that went drastically decreased the ability and availability to do that.
So what then started transpiring in your heart that led you to start exploring other ways of ministering outside of the traditional models? Even though obviously your church was not very traditional in the way it functioned, still more like a traditional church. What were some of those things that started to make you go, "Huh, oh, I wonder what could be different here?"
Well, I think the first thing that got me thinking, like, we need to change, we need to do something different, we need to do something better, was, and this, so the dynamics of our church, we were about, at different times, either 80% college students to 20% community members, or even at times 90% college students to 10% community members. So your dynamics are already, we did not have a college ministry. We were a college ministry that had a community ministry.
Wow.
So it's kind of backwards of most churches that you would experience. But my heart was to see college students come through either grow in Christ, or if they didn't know Christ, come to know Christ and then grow in him, and then be launched out into the world to make a difference wherever they scatter to, in whatever careers they go into, whatever cities they end up in, whatever families they have. And we started to see over time, it takes time to see this. When you're young, you're not seeing the bigger picture. You're not seeing how are people doing 5 years, 10 years down the road. And as I had been in ministry for a while, really started to see a number of alumni, friends, people who I know, love, care for, invested in. Some quickly just fall away from faith completely. Many kind of get involved in a local church, and actually had some just sit there. And some of that wasn't even their fault. Some of that was, I had different alumni come back to me saying, I've got involved in this church. They teach the word of God. The music's great. I'm building community. And the only role I can do, because I'm young, I'm just out of college, or even middle 20s for some of them, I can serve with the kids, or I can help with parking. And they're just like, nothing wrong with parking or helping with kids. That's just not my passion. I'd rather lead outreach or do something with men's ministry, but I can't step into those roles yet. I have to be there longer. And so I started saying, how can we do things better? I can't take care of some of those things about, how they can be involved per se. That's not my role. I'm not involved in those churches to lead those churches, to say, hey, you should really let these guys lead. But I started to look at how do we best equip these college students to prepare for life after college? How do you prepare for that change when you're not living within a few square miles of each other? You'll have these gaps in the middle of your day. Got 3-hour gap in between class to grab coffee. Now that's they live in a place, they have a job where they're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They might be getting married. Their church is 20 minutes, 30 minutes down the road. How do you help these college students prepare for change, but really to know and love and follow Jesus and make a difference wherever they scatter to? And so I was like, we got to do discipleship better. And didn't know what that meant, but started learning about discipleship, started learning about the importance of living missionally. What I saw is some of the students who left and lived more missionally, they usually were the ones who were strongest in their faith, growing in community. And so I was like, okay, how do we help all these students catch that vision of intentional, missional, impactful living, not just church is a piece of the pie and I'm going to check it off. It's like, no, I am the church. I am a follower of Jesus. So Jesus has got to saturate all parts of my life. That was kind of some of the questions and the things I observed that started me on this journey.
It's so interesting. When I was a pastor, we were probably 20% college students, so not 80%. Yeah. So I would say 10 to 20%, the opposite of you, of college students. And my wife and I were just reflecting on some of this recently, is we also saw a lot of them graduate and they would be on fire for the Lord. And within a couple years, some of them are just denouncing faith, walking away from faith. And that was so hard.
Breaks your heart.
Oh my gosh, so sad. You're oh my gosh, this is just awful. And some of them you'd see just kind of, you're right, coasting. And we were asking the same questions, and we were just reflecting back, and the people that really seem to have had the longevity are the ones that had some kind of familial experience in a simple gathering. And again, I'm not saying just you get into a living room, it's going to fix all the problems, but I think that aspect of being a part of our family. So a lot of the young people that we had in our home as part of our simple church, they still connect with us, and they're all over the
Yeah.
country. They still connect with us.
Yeah.
They still reach out when they need wisdom. They're doing great. They're like just really trying to pursue the Lord. And um, I'm just, realizing like that is such an essential piece, especially for that age, is disciple them, but also teaching them what it means to be a spiritual family where they belong, where
Hmm.
they can grow, where they can ask their questions, where they can practice the gifts of the Spirit, all of those things. It's just interesting you reflecting that, because Michelle, my wife, and I were just talking about this recently as well.
Well, it's so true, and that's we love having students over. And I was just thinking we were doing some pre-marriage counseling with a couple, and not every meeting, but some of the meetings we had them over for dinner. And so, as a part of that dinner, they got to see us interacting with our three boys. But then we also, not all the time, but often do some sort of devotional at the end of dinner.
Mm.
And as much as I'm like, okay, this is to encourage our boys, in those moments, I'm like, this isn't even really about my family. This is about modeling it for this couple who are about to get married. One day we'll probably have kids. And it's how do they disciple their kids when they're parents. And so I like the doing and the modeling a lot more than just talking about it.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've come to some similar conclusions, like a lot of us have, of not that there's no impact in giving a message, not that there's no power in it, but the stuff that I think that I've seen in people's lives, especially young people that, you've experienced a lot of young people, it's them being in your life, you being in their life, them being a part of your family, you modeling life for them in just real deep relational ways. And I think sometimes the downside is, in a lot of our traditional settings, you can't even do that with most of the people in your church, though you're maybe expected to. You can't do that. You can do that with a few. Did you ever find that pressure as the pastor of a college church to try to be invested in all these kids' lives? Or how did you figure out who to invite into your life, who not to?
Well, yes, and that's why I went into ministry, was for those relationships. I believe it's
Yeah.
relationships are more important than nailing the perfect message or anything. And so, yeah, I never. It's not like I didn't enjoy that pressure. I really did, in the sense of like I love building those relationships. But what I found is, especially as I went into that lead role where I was speaking a lot more and leading elders meetings and things like that, is that I didn't have nearly the capacity to either have more of those types of relationships or take the ones I did have deeper and more intentional. And so, I mean, I look back over 16 years, or especially the last 10, and there were very few guys that I got closer with in those 10 years. I probably did more in the first 6 years than I did in the final 10, just because the roles had changed and I had other responsibilities that were good things that actually took me away from. I mean, part of why I had to step away was I felt like I wasn't making disciples very well. Because I was almost spread too thin. I had almost too many relationships rather than investing in the few. I was trying to invest in a lot.
Wow. Which, I mean, you have to as a pastor. I mean, that's just kind of the demands of things. But it's interesting to me. So you were growing in a discontentment of like, hey, we're not doing a good job of discipling these students to when they leave here to be able to really be self-feeding, to know what to do wherever they're sent
Right.
to. But also it was a personal wrestling of, but am I making disciples? Am I
Absolutely.
modeling this for the church, of living, putting my money where my mouth is? And it sounds like the answer for you was not really, because you're busy running a church.
Yeah. In many ways, I was busy running a church and had too many relationships spread all out instead of being able to have just a few where I could zoom in more. Um,
So what'd you do with that then? You started growing this discontentment. You started wondering, like, where'd you go from there?
well, I mean, we had COVID as a part of that, so I got to try some things in COVID, and that was kind of eye-opening. There were certain things that I loved, that because we got to try things that we never would have tried. And I also saw, because I had tried to implement and had been trying to implement some things into our ministry, and some things were like, hey, yeah, that's good, let's do that. Like students bought in, community members bought in, and I love the people there. Some were really, they gave me grace and said, yeah, go for it, Josh, try that, you know? So I'm grateful for the people. But I think as COVID, as you know, in Michigan, it strung out a lot longer than, as our students joked, the free state of Indiana. They would go to Indiana and enjoy more, like dinner out, you know, things like that, like crazy things. But I started to realize that I didn't think as many people as I thought would be interested in doing what I was passionate about and what I was learning. I don't think a lot of them were gonna come along with me. They're like, oh yeah, you want to do more outreach? Okay, let's make it a program. Let's, you know, and I had 5 years of thinking about this and processing this and praying with people about this and trying to catch them up. And it was just like, no, I don't know if it fits in our program. We're already pretty busy. Can we add this? Or let's try to add this one thing. But it's like, no, we need to make a big shift. And so I felt, as my wife and I prayed, that it was better for us to step away than really continue to try to do things that maybe a number of people weren't ready for.
Okay.
And so, because we had tried some things and implemented some things, but that was part of it. But the other big part was just myself personally, of saying, if Jesus said, go make disciples, and I'm not able to do that very well, I'm kind of asking people to do something I'm not even doing. And so that's why I was like, I need to step away. Still have great relationships with many of the people there, the community members anyway. The college students, they've all graduated and left and everything. So I have those types of relationships in a different way. I get to visit them when we're traveling and hear from them in different ways. But it's just like, I need to step away, and we need to step away and lean into disciple making individually, learning how to do that as a family. And so that's what we did.
Wow, that's great. I'm curious, what led you to say, I need to actually step away from this thing entirely to be able to make disciples, versus, hey, I can just start making disciples more intentionally and still do what I'm doing as being the lead pastor here?
Well, I'm not one to rush into any decision. I tend to take too long sometimes. And so this was a 5 or 6 year journey of learning about discipleship, learning about house church and healthy house church. Because at first I was like, any house church I had experience with from years ago was like, oh, they were mad about something and they just started a house church. We'll gather in the living room. And I'm like, that's not healthy. And so this was a 5 or 6 year kind of process of me, in many ways, trying to do certain things, trying to do more outreach was part of it, trying to meet with just a few guys consistently. And I never felt like I could do that well. And so it wasn't just like all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm done with the traditional model. Let's go. This was a 5 or 6 year journey, and you could talk to some people who, like I said, were very gracious, who kind of put up with some things from me, and some of those were the students who were like, they're usually more like, okay, yeah, let's go try something, you know. But some really wise community members who were just gracious with me. Kind of, I think Francis Chan talked about this in his book Letters to the Church, of like, just didn't feel like he led very well in that season, because he just like, we got to do this, we got to do that. And so I was doing some of that, just as I was learning things, like, let's do it, you know.
I think that makes a lot of sense, though, because I mean, I wrestle with that, and I think a lot of folks on this pastor to pioneer journey wrestle with that too. It's like, well, can I just do this while I'm a pastor? And I think it's wise to start trying, like, experience it. Don't jump into something you've never even tried to experience and figure out, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but it sounds like as you did that, you just felt like, okay, there's going to be constant resistance. Not everyone's going to be about this. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like still a lot of your time was being spent on running the church, getting sermons ready every week. And so it sounds like you felt like I just step away. I have more freedom and more time to really get after this. Am I right in that?
Yeah, I would say so. And even if it wasn't resistance, it was we were so busy doing good things. In campus ministry, there's a lot of good things going on too. I just couldn't do the things that I knew I needed to do in regards to discipleship consistently. I'd get to do it this much, or I get to go on a spring break mission trip and experience a week immersion of like learning about this and doing this. But then it was come back and we got to get ready for graduation. We got to get ready for leadership for the next year, and it's just like the list went on. And you look at it and you're like, these are all good things. And personally, I had the conviction these good things are actually keeping me from making disciples the way I feel I should. And that was like, after trying and trying for a few years, it was like, I got to make a change. And so it was a conviction of saying, the word says, go make disciples. And I'm doing a lot of other good things that are actually keeping me from doing that one thing.
Dude, that's incredible. So what was it like for you when you finally decided, okay, I'm stepping out? What was that process like with you in the church? What was it like for you and your family? That's a big decision.
So I really tried to be open with people. My wife and I had been praying for really since spring of 2022 about what next steps were, feeling like our time is kind of wrapping up here. And so it's kind of a weird dynamic. You got elders at the local level in Mount Pleasant. You've got an executive director down in Lansing because he oversees the statewide campus ministry. So lots of layers. I shared with one of my a guy who I had brought in a few years before, who was actually taking some of the teaching off my plate so that I'd have more freedom. And so I really invited the elders, the executive director, and my friend and coworker to really just be praying, saying, I don't know what's next. I'm not sure. And so that went on for about 11 months. And then in spring of 23, felt like, okay, we'll wrap up at the end of June to kind of finish that school year well, and then give them a few months in the summer to get ready for that transition. Things get calmer in the summer. It still goes on. There's still lots happening, but it gets smaller because most of the college students are not in Mount Pleasant during that time. And so I tried to be open and honest. And at first it was like, I'm feeling like my time might be done. I don't know what's next. And then as we got to March of 2023, it was, okay, it is coming to an end. And I'm going to be working with this new ministry, Big Life. And this is what our focus is going to be. And so I tried to be open with those who were in authority over me, as well as a real close coworker, and then and my wife. And then from there I also my mom was praying for us and stuff too, but it was mostly
Gotta get those moms praying.
Yeah, you gotta get the moms praying.
Yeah.
And just a few other really close friends. They'd kind of been on staff with me years ago who'd scattered. So I had my good friend praying for me and stuff too, halfway across the country praying for me. So
love that. It's such I think it's so hard to know how to do that transition well. And a lot of pastors, that we work with PAP, it's like, there's a million different ways they go about it based on their situation. So I'm always curious how pastors have done it and how to do it well. And it's always that balance of like honoring the Lord, honoring the people that you're serving with, honoring the church, honoring all of that. It's like you're balancing so many things. And so way to go, man. It sounds like you did it well, and you did it in a really honoring way, even though it took you 11 months.
Yeah.
I think your heart and the way you went about it just sounds incredible, man.
Yeah. Well, I value those relationships, and I'm still in a lot of those relationships currently it's just different. I'm not the pastor there. I'm not a part of that elder board team, but I see those guys, still do a Bible study with a few of them here and there, as well. And so it's encouraging, and like us teaching them the 411 literally on Tuesday, how to share your testimony, how to share the gospel, who are people you can share with. So still influencing, and encouraging, but I had to make a change. But I really value those relationships, still do, and tried to do it as best I could. I tried to learn from mistakes of years of ministry where you just see either myself or others do things wrong. You're like, okay, how do I do this right? And thankfully, we're good friends, and still in relationship to this day.
Way to go. Way to go. What's the transition been like for you, now that you're stepping into full-time disciple making, being the church in more simple ways? So it's been simple. It's been 40 generations deep, right? And like revival breaking out. Is that, am I accurate in that?
Oh, absolutely. Everything is perfect. No, I wish. I think God has been refining me and growing me and us as a family. I had to detox from traditional church and some of those expectations, simple things like we quickly found another family. God led us to another family, and we're really good friends with them and everything. But in the summers, we don't meet on Sundays. And so I felt like guilty on Sunday morning, like we're not meeting on, like we're meeting either Sunday night or a different weeknight to gather to worship. But Sunday morning, I'm like, I'm supposed to be in church. Like, I'd almost like, I wouldn't want to go outside because like, what are my neighbors what are they going to think, if this former pastor isn't going to a church building on Sunday. And so I had to deal with like detoxing and, guilt or whatever. But that's just one example. That took some time. Now on Sunday morning, it's still there a little bit, but it's like, now I'll go outside, I'll maybe mow the lawn or something, or sometimes I actually like, maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe it starts a conversation in my neighborhood or something. But it's been, there's been some really good and there's been some really hard. There's been some days that I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. I am made for this. And some days where you're like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't know. Can we keep, like, is this for us or not? And so it's been almost 2 years, not 2 years yet, but I think it's been really good for our family. First and foremost, our family. We have 3 boys. We have right now, 15, 11, and 9 are ages of our boys. And so it's been really good to, instead of them coming in the church building, maybe saying hi to me as I'm running around getting ready for a message and welcoming everybody, they'd run downstairs, they'd do their thing, which was good. They were taught the Word of God and everything at that. But now they're with mom and dad, they're with a few other adults, and they're with 4 other kids. And so there's like 7 kids, ages from like 9 to 16, and 4 adults right now. It was our gathering, and then some guests here and there. But it's been really good for them. They get to ask questions. They get to share insights. They're expected to participate, and not just be taught and told, but what do you think? What do you have to share? One of the kids last week led our communion time. Well, the other one picked out the songs we were going to sing. And so we try to involve them as much as possible to show that they're valuable. They have a say. Every member has gets to contribute. And now it's not perfect. I mean, sometimes you're like, okay, we let them stay up too late last night. They're kind of tired. They're struggling to pay attention. But so it's not just like, oh, it's perfect. I look at some of my peers, yourself or some others who have been on this podcast, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have started that with my kids when they were like, I don't know, 1. That's what they would know then, instead of trying to implement it at 13 and 14 and stuff. But we're learning, we're growing as a family, and it's been that's probably been the best part. Is I feel like I'm a better husband and better dad now.
Wow.
And like we were always intentional, but it's taken it to another level.
Wow.
I find myself laughing with my kids more and really just getting to know them and their personalities as they grow. Um, and
Well,
sometimes,
hold on.
yeah,
You
yeah,
just made a pretty profound statement. I don't want to just gloss over it. You just said you found yourself laughing more with your kids and getting to know their personality. Why do you think that has increased since you stepped away from your role as a pastor?
because I was tired. I mean, um, I was just, I think I was never neglecting my wife or my boys, but I think I was giving my best to the the church, or maybe I should say the events or the programs, or that message. I mean, sometimes you'd just get home and you'd be, I'm here, but I'm exhausted. And uh, it's been good for me to slow down. COVID did help with that. I'll be first. So it wasn't like it was just stepping away, but COVID helped with that. And then as I stepped away, I've always been encouraged, like, ministry starts in your home. And so having these gaps, to be with my wife more, be with my kids more. Yeah, just
It's incredible.
that's been really good.
I've experienced the same thing, so I get exactly what you're saying. It's been incredible for my family and my relationship with them.
Good.
You'd mentioned some highs and lows, some good days and bad days.
Yeah.
For the good days, what makes good days good days?
So it could be a few different things. For me, it's relationships. So if I'm doing outreach, you have some good conversations. Like some people are like, yeah, I'd like to hear the gospel, or yeah, I'm interested to hear more. Get to pray for some people. Maybe it's you have a meeting set up and it just goes well. They're asking questions. They're saying, you can just be like, man, they're hungry for God and they really want to follow him. Some of the things I really enjoy doing is, if I am doing outreach, I struggle doing it by myself. I really do. But if I have either a peer with me or a college student with me, I'm like, no matter how it goes with the people we encounter, I am so excited about this guy his willingness to maybe be uncomfortable, face some fears, get to share the gospel maybe for the first time. And I'm like, yes, I love everybody we're encountering, but I really love what God's doing in this guy. And so I've learned that Jesus sent him out 2 by 2 on purpose. I think it's much better, and much more encouraging for me when there's somebody with me. But I get to work with athletes a lot, and so if I'm working with a player and he starts to catch a vision of like, oh, I have a roommate, I could really be intentional with him, or I'm in this position group, I'm going to really get to know the other guys in this position better, and not just to help them be as football players, but I'm going to represent Christ where I go into my athletic team. And those are the things that really get me fired up, is when somebody starts to do that and kind of is desiring to grow, to be a difference maker, a disciple in everyday life. That's the good day.
Real quick, before we get into the bad days,
there's no bad. So
there's no bad, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We'll skip over that. But you'd mentioned you work with a lot of athletes. How did you come to work with a lot of athletes?
So when I first came on staff right out of college, the campus minister at the time, the lead minister at the time, he had been the chaplain for the CMU football team. But there was a new head coach, and this head coach had said he wanted to bring more structure to the chaplain program. And my friend, my boss, my mentor, he was like, that's awesome. I don't have time to do everything you want to do. Can I bring someone along to help? And the head coach said yes. I was that someone. I was the one who stepped into it at 23 years old, didn't have a clue what I was doing, but knew that ministry was about relationships. And so that led to, then I went to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes meeting. That day, there was a bunch of coaching changes. So some coaching staff had been fired. Some had been moved on to a different university. And so a lot of the leaders were going to be gone. And they said, well, would you guest speak the next week? So I did, and after that, the kind of the student leaders said, "Hey, do you want to lead FCA?" So after showing up to 2 meetings, I was the leader of it, and I led it as an associate for those 6 years. And so I was working very closely with football, but also with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Really got to know a lot of the other athletes from the sports teams around Central Michigan. And so, long story short, I had been the chaplain up until 2021. And COVID really messed with that. And my boys were getting older, and I started to miss a lot of my boys' stuff. And I didn't have the relationship. So it was kind of like I was doing good things, but I didn't have the relationships with the guys. And so I stepped away. And just a few months ago, my friend who had stepped into leading being like the lead chaplain for the team said, "Hey, there's a new coaching staff. They really want to bring structure to it again." So it kind of sounded like how I got into it the first time. And he's like, they want to have a team of chaplains. Would you want to be a part of that team of chaplains? And so I jumped back in just a few months ago. And again, I'm building those relationships with the players, the coaches, and then the support staff there at CMU. So,
I think I've heard from you and others, Mark Douglas, who was recently on the podcast as well, just how chaplaincy can be such an easy way for those of us that used to be pastors into relationships with people and some pretty vulnerable places. So whether it be a sports team, chaplaincy, I'm still trying to be the chaplain of the Chicago Cubs. That hasn't really panned out quite yet. Maybe next year. But
maybe the Tigers.
Or like Mark Douglas with corporate chaplaincy, even just part-time, a few hours a week, just like that role, how it is such an inroads to people that are hurting and open to the gospel. I just think it's worth taking note of for some of our listeners that, hey, if you're transitioning into some pioneering work, maybe talk to the Lord about it, but some form of chaplaincy might be a way to find people that are open to the gospel.
Yeah. I for me, it's with college athletes. Like you said, for Mark, it's a different role. I have a friend who was in ministry, and now he does like hospice chaplaincy and takes a special person, but he's amazing at it. And it just puts him in places and meeting people who maybe would never have walked through his church doors.
It's awesome. Well, obviously you're experiencing a lot of great things, a lot of great relationships. What are some of the challenges in what you're doing now?
Yeah, so some of those rougher days where you're just like, man, is anything happening, or am I made for this? I've found, and this is one of the things I've learned, is I need rhythm. I need more structure than I thought I did. And so creating some rhythms have helped. But there's the days where maybe you have 3 meetings set up and all 3 get canceled last minute, or you go out and do some outreach and maybe you chicken out, like as you're out there by yourself, and you just, sometimes you chicken out, and it's like, oh man, like that's hard for me. I've done outreach for a long time, but it's still hard for me. I'm an introvert by nature. And so let's say for me, it's like the inconsistencies of like, I have my day planned and then all of a sudden everything falls through, or I'm doing some outreach and nobody really wants to talk. Nobody wants prayer. I'd say just when you have a plan and nothing, like I'm okay with things changing, but it's hard when things just go away. Those are the hard days for me. And sometimes you just sit there and be like, man, is anything really happening? Like I've shared the gospel more in the last 2 years than I've ever shared the gospel. But I have not had nearly as many responses. Probably because before I was sharing it with people who had showed up to a church building, usually there's some sort of spiritual interest. Now it's with people you meet at the park or at the store. And so you're like, man, I'm doing this more, but it seems like there's less fruit. in the short run. And so it can be discouraging. I had around 200 or so people who were looking to me, and sometimes you're like, ugh, like that's tiring, that's exhausting. But then it's like, man, I got nobody looking to me now. Like some of that, giving up that title, who cares about the title? It's more about the role. Like I was in front of 200 people who knew me and could reach out to me. And now it's like, you don't have that. I don't have 200 people who are like, hey, what about this? I got to meet with you. It's like, nope, not. They're going to other people now. So those are hard days.
Those are tough, man. Those are really hard. What have you learned to kind of navigate those difficult days? Has the Lord been revealing anything to you? Anything you've learned along the way?
Well, my friend Neil, who you know well, and has been a numerous time guest on your show.
He's been on more than anyone. Yeah,
he has, yeah. So he has just always encouraged me that like prayer counts. Like if things get canceled, spend time to pray. If we're trying to do something that is going to take the Lord to do it, to see a movement, to see disciples made to the fourth generation and well beyond. He's like, that's going to take prayer. And so he's encouraged me, like, even on normal days, like we need to be praying boldly and bigger than we ever have before. But also it's like when things aren't going as planned, hey, you had a meeting with a guy named Steve, and Steve didn't show up. Well, that was going to be you, Steve, and Jesus anyway. So now it's you and Jesus. Spend some time praying. Maybe it's for Steve. I don't know a Steve. I'm just using that as a name. But spend time praying for that guy. Spend time praying for other things. Just like don't just put your head down and be like, oh, like, yeah, I canceled again, or I got, stood up again. Because that happens a lot when you're meeting new people. Sometimes people ghost you in a text message of asking to meet up, and other times they say, yeah, I'll meet up, and then they ghost you that way. So you have to learn to deal with rejection, and one of the best ways to deal with that is prayer, of saying, Lord, it's not really about me and what I can do, but would you work here?
Yeah, that's such good wisdom on how to spend your time and just the necessity of prayer. Has the Lord revealed anything to you about how to not have successful days drive how, oh, it's an amazing day because it was successful, and it was a terrible day because it wasn't? Have you figured any of that out yet?
I don't know if I figured it out, but I've learned some things. You look at like the prophets from the Old Testament, like they were, despised, rejected. And so it's just good to be like, okay, I'm not alone in this. Of just thinking back, whether it's biblical stories of like almost being like, okay, that didn't go well for them either, so that's good. But they were faithful. So trying to be faithful, regardless of what the results are. And then I'd say, I think the other thing is it's good to have those friends as well, not just me going to the Lord and praying, but who are those friends and people who will encourage me, who will just even stop and pray for me. And so those people are crucial to just be like, hey, keep going and everything. And I'd say the last thing, I kind of touched on this already, though, is there are certain things that you can create a structure with. And so for someone like me, who I always viewed myself as very flexible, I've realized I'm not as flexible as I thought. So I do need certain structures. And some of those you can't control. You might have a meeting with someone that's a part of your structure, but then they cancel. But there's other structures that, just for me, healthy rhythms. So reading at a certain time, praying at a certain time, just keeping some consistent rhythms myself personally, or my family. Because, I see them every day. So some of those rhythms have helped with the external rhythms that maybe are less controlled. So.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all that and just your honesty. It is. It's not always easy, and I think some of us, especially if we're extremely optimistic, it's like we'll do this and it's going to be amazing. And it's often challenging and it's humbling, and the Lord, is refining us in the process. And I think what I'm encouraged by, what I hear you saying is like, of course you want others to be impacted, but even yet, at the end of the day, even if no one else gets impacted by the work you're doing now, your family has. And your family has been transformed, and that will be generational dividends and generational impact because of it. And so I think that's worth celebrating. Again, I hope other relationships turn out to be transformative for them and to come to know Jesus. But I also think, look at even where it started, and that alone is worth the shift that you've made. So way to go, man.
Absolutely. So thanks for having me, and thanks for all the encouragement you've offered along the way as well.
Hey, man, it's a privilege to be with you, and I'm grateful for you just being so willing to share your story, and maybe we'll have you on in another 2 years to give us another update on where. Yeah, I think that's the hardest part about the podcast is people, they share their story up to that point, and then more stuff happens. Like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing, and it's so fun to get to do this and hear people's stories, because these stories they're unbelievable. They're so incredible. I always say, like, I don't care if anyone listens. I love hearing the stories, and I'll just push record and have a conversation. That's fine by me.
Yep. Absolutely. Stories are so powerful. They can be so encouraging. So
heck yeah, man. Well, I look forward. Hopefully I get to see you soon. And I'm sure there's an event coming up we'll be at together, an excuse to hang out together. So I look forward to that, man. But thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Absolutely, Britton. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening today. Wherever you're at on the journey from pastor to pioneer, we would love to journey with you and support you. You can find more information and get in touch with us at pastortopioneer.com.